Well, hello and welcome to my living room for this first virtual drawing and painting class. You will hopefully have received the email last night with some instructions, your mission gym, should you choose to accept it. Please destroy... No, never mind. So the theme outlined on the information that I sent you was the mantelpiece. So we're going to start with still life, interior subject matter. I'm hoping to work onto the figure, but I think if we can iron out some of the basic issues of communicating and me guiding you with your work through a still life interior subject, that's probably not a bad idea. So you can see behind me is my mantelpiece in our sitting room, and I've arranged some objects on there, things that were there already and things that I've added. And I'm now going to demonstrate to you some of the stages of what I would like you to do. So I suggested in the information that I gave you that it would be good to start with some small studies. And I'm asking you, oh, my microphone's come off. I'm asking you to do 2 black and white studies and a colour one. So see how far I can go with this presentation before I have to switch it off or pause it. You might look through a viewfinder, that's always very useful. You could cut yourself a window, but I just wanted you to see what I meant by these little studies. So I've got some charcoal. You will have looked at the images I sent you, the Vuillard and the Victoria Crow, and I think, well, I was about to put the mantelpiece there, but I think I want to put it a bit lower, don't I? I think it helps. The mantelpiece is a kind of mini stage set. I think rather than too much of a horizontal line, I want a slight angle, but just sliding the side of the charcoal down across the page, I can get a roughish straight line. And I've got a pot plant over here. So these studies, the idea is to have a starting point to make some choices from. So you'll see with my studies that they're very quick and loose, and they're not very detailed yet, because if I'm not too detailed at this stage, I can make changes and I can select the aspects that I think are worth keeping and change those that aren't. So there's my book. We've got those 3 Swedish horses. I've got a book, maybe the book's a bit further over, and then I've got a photograph in a frame. So those are the roughly, loosely described objects on my mantelpiece, and I've got the corner of a framed painting on the wall, like that. So that's how I'm starting like that, because I might want to move things, in my picture, or I might even stop drawing and go over to the mantelpiece and change the arrangement. You're thinking about a certain rhythm, what things do I want to be more obvious and what things do I want to play down. So this is me starting just with some charcoal, smudging it with my fingers and getting some of those objects set out. I think when you work like this, it's good to do not only outlines, but also do some smudging, get a pattern of tone developed, so that when you look at your drawing, you can really judge from it whether you like it. Is this a good subject? Is this a good arrangement? Or would it be good to change things? Now, like me, you'll probably find you can't fit everything in. So there's a bit of adapting to the scale. I've only got 2 horses in there, so I really should change all that. But I want to be able to give you a bit of an idea of the process. So this is the first of my black and white drawings, and I'm going to spend, I suggest you spend maybe 10 minutes 5 or 10 minutes getting it started. The point being that when you go on to work on a larger piece, hopefully you will have sorted out a few ideas, a few issues, what you want to keep, how you want to rearrange things, and a sort of point and aim to your drawing. So I won't do any more to that for now, but I could have gone on making things stronger. I could have used the eraser to refine some of these shapes. In fact, if you've been getting the 14 days videos that Anya and I have been doing, the one that I put out today is about a tonal drawing. So you can have a quick look at that if you have time. But I'm noticing that the top of my mantelpiece is dark, and actually there's a light edge to it. I put the book on the edge because I wanted to break up that edge a little bit. So if you like, I've arranged things in such a way that I think is better. And there's various shadows on the wall. I'm doing this on Sunday afternoon, and there's a lovely afternoon light actually coming through, casting a lot of shadows on this wall. So that could be a theme for my drawing. But I'm now going to move you around. I'd like you to see my mantelpiece from another angle. If you looked at those images on the handout that I gave you, let's try that. Vuillard's mantelpiece is seen at an angle and is therefore probably a more dynamic. Oh no, the thing has come out. I've got to do it all over again. Right, well I lost my microphone, so I don't know how much of that you got. I've moved the camera so that we can see this from a different angle. You might have noticed that Vuillard's mantelpiece was painted from an angle. So I had a go at that. This is another drawing that I did, looking at my mantelpiece from this angle, possibly more dynamic. It's another one of my charcoal drawings, and I've sprayed it so that I could do a bit of colour on. So that's a different idea, angling the mantelpiece on the drawing a bit like that. And let's say that I'm happy with that composition. I've also included the peace lily, is that what it is? And having put down some charcoal, I'm now going to try some colour on top, because I've suggested that you should start with a couple of black and white drawings and then go on to producing one in colour. So here's my pastel drawing. No, it's a charcoal one. And if I've got enough hands to hold everything, I'll start to put some colour in. And how do we approach this? Maybe a little bit of grey. Maybe a bit of grey for the mantelpiece. Don't want to drop anything, but I'm going to put some grey down for my mantelpiece first. Good way to start a little colour study, of course, is to block in some of the big areas, and I think the grey mantelpiece is not a bad place to start. I've got a red book. A little bit of that over there. Smudging the colour on, and some dark green for those leaves. So the purpose of these studies, colour, black and white and then colour, is to prepare you for when you make a larger piece in, I would suggest, in mixed media. You can sort out colours and you can start to think about your choice of subject matter, the angle that you've viewed it at, and so on. Things can be sorted out in the colour drawing on the small scale that you can put to work on the bigger scale. And maybe a little bit of orange red for those Swedish horses. Lined up there. So I hope that's enough to give you a bit of an idea of what could happen next with the colour stage. Of course, I'm feeling my way with the whole process of getting it to work remotely, and I've got to give you enough information to get started, but not go on too long. The videos I've been doing with Anya seem to go on far too long. So there's a little study in colour. I'm going to pause the video . So I've paused the video and restarted it now because I'm set up to work on a bigger scale. So here is a piece of cartridge paper. I've just put it on a board. I'm going to lean it on a chair down here so that I can work. And I've got a piece of work, a little study I did in colour, and I'm going to suggest you work in mixed media. Got to get everything close enough to work with. Get my water. So it depends what you've got. You could just work in charcoal and pastel, but I think mixed media is a good way to work. So I've got a little bit of watercolour. And I've got some burnt sienna, some water, and what I worked out in my composition was that I was going to have, firstly, angling the mantelpiece a bit like that, and I've got my, might be too high, let's get that further down. And I've got my pot of lilies over here. I'm going to shorten the lily because I actually want to have that as part of it. Then I've got a candlestick here. And I've got my book. That should be hanging over the edge. Never mind. This is what it's all about. Show the people how it can work and how you can change things. So we've got the photograph frame over here, I've got the book there, and I've got my horses in their lines like that. There's the candle, and then this is the flower. So I can make that plant a little bit smaller. And some perspective. So here's the edge of the mantelpiece. You can see that. There's the edge of the mantelpiece at an angle. The back of the mantelpiece, we've got some converging lines. So can you see that goes up, that goes across, but still angled. And then the picture frame on the wall is probably horizontally across my composition and reappears somewhere up here. So I've just used a little bit of burnt sienna, and I'm just going to back that up with a bit of ultramarine. I can dissolve it. Because my bit of painting thus far, you may be confused, I certainly am. Might be quite nice just to strengthen a few bits so I remember what's what. So I added a little bit of I had burnt sienna and I added some ultramarine just to do something a little bit darker. But I'm going to be working with mixed media, and by getting the watercolour down first, I think I've got a good basis, once it's dry, for something that I can draw into. That's the angle of the book. And the horses, I think, just got to be a bit smaller. So that's just to show you a way that you might start with watercolour. But you could do charcoal and pastel, or straight into pastel. See what appeals to you. I'm going to pause the video again, let that dry, and then just do a little bit of work in pastel to finish the explanation. So my watercolour beginning has had time to dry. Not completely dry, but I'm really worried my video is going to run out before I get to the end of this demonstration. So it would probably be worth, I've got a box of pastels now, and I might do a little bit of drawing with pastels to find a few outlines. So for example, I put the book, the Oxford Book of Carols, on the edge of the mantelpiece. That's very foreshortened. So I'm outlining that a bit. You can see that. And then over here I've got the candlestick. And what I've got to do is decide, with those first shapes I put down, if they're not in exactly the right place, does it matter? If it does, well then I'll move them. But if it doesn't, well then I can keep them where they are. So that's the candlestick, and then a little bit higher up I've got the bowl. So because I used some burnt sienna and some ultramarine, I've got a kind of brown underpainting. So a little bit of some brown lines with the pastel actually work quite well. So I can get some of that a bit clearer. So as I would often suggest to you with your paintings, a bit of monochrome drawing and refining is not a bad way to start, especially if you're relaxed about it and you're ready to make changes. It's a guide, gets you started. It's also something that you can change, because you see the horses seem to be a bit further over here. So you get the idea. I'm redrawing some of these elements, hopefully thinking a lot about as well what I'm trying to convey through my piece of work. I'd suggested that Victoria Crow's painting of Jenny Armstrong's mantelpiece was really a portrait. So you might, and Vuillard's was much more, I think Vuillard's was much more spontaneous, just really what he saw around him. Don't think it was particularly a portrait of his mother, but it was the home that he shared with his mother. So that would be a bit of redrawing, and then as I did with the little colour one, I might just start with the mantelpiece, which at the moment is a darker grey. So you know well now, it's good to start with negative shapes. So I can work around some of those objects. So I'm just using the chalk pastels, which go on in such a way that we can see through to some of the under drawing. It's always good to work with big areas. So the grey of the mantelpiece, some of the white light along the edge. I'd often tend to save light until a bit later, but maybe while I've got the white, there's a few light things I could pick out. The red of the book, I'll hatch that in a bit. That still feels a bit wet actually, so I'll just smudge that in. And those horses actually are much more of an orange. This is the wrong orange, but I'll just do that for now. So this is a familiar stage of just blocking in a bit of colour. And I'm going for some of the main colours. Again, many of the ones that I would have used when I did the little study. Can't find the dark green. Where is it? I can't find it. It is there, but because I'm attached by a microphone, it's quite hard to move around. Anyway, so blocking in some of those colours as a next stage. And then I'll have to be very quick about the final stages. I'm hoping that you would have managed to spend, say, 20 minutes on doing the little studies, and you could give yourself an hour and a half or something for this stage. But you'll block in first, and then you will go back into particular parts of the drawing and start to add definition, emphasis. What is it that's particularly interesting about your mantelpiece? Are you interested in the light? There's that lovely light in the Victoria Crow one, the winter light on the mantelpiece. I'm blocking in first, but then maybe I can use, in the case of the candle, a bit of white. That's not white, that's grey. A bit of white to get some light. Maybe I'll get the candle stick in a bit more yellow and even a bit of yellow light, and so on. So blocking in first, but then starting to think about emphasis. What do we want to draw attention to? I think there's a lot of shadow and tonal contrast in some of my objects now. Shadows cast onto the mantelpiece. Is the book significant? Do I want the book to stand out? That photograph, which incidentally is me as a baby, would I draw attention to that? And so on. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to spend 90 minutes, probably with breaks if you've done what I've done, watercolour, start, and then putting on pastel colours, or just working with one medium. That's entirely up to you. But if you've been doing that sort of layering, then you'll want time for things to dry. I've got a sort of magnolia wall, so I might start to look at some of the spaces. Drop the chalk on the floor. Can't pick the chalk up because I'm attached by a wire. Here's another bit of chalk. So you can gradually do that, and again, working with pastel, I might want to spray this in order to build things up. But there, I think that's as much as I should demonstrate to you, to give you an idea of this being the longer piece. I actually lent it on a chair because I thought you won't have an easel, so I just put this on a chair so that I could work, and specifically had all my materials slightly out of reach so I couldn't get to them. But there's my mantelpiece, and there is the piece of work that I'm producing. So good luck, and what we're going to do now is I'll end the video, and I hope you can get yourself set up, and perhaps we can communicate. The easiest probably is if you send me an email or a text. If you've got any questions, things didn't make sense, I will try and help you get started. And then if we can communicate during the morning, you might, if you can manage this with your phone, take a photograph of your work. As I say, particularly if there are questions, and I'll try and answer those by email or by text. And then at the end of the morning, if we can show our work, again, if you send me a photograph, I can email it out to everybody, and I'll send you a quiz. Okay, well, good luck. Bye-bye.